all having respect for everyone involved here tonight. So I think they deserve a hand before they get to their family. Okay, Mr. Ballard, if you could spend 3 minutes with each voter in Fayette County, what would you say in order to earn their vote?
I'd say several things I forgot to say here tonight. I'd say, first of all, I was the first sergeant there in Princeton. I was over the Princeton and Welch detachments, which is roughly 22, probably had 20, 25 employees, which I was responsible for their duties. Probably not into whatever happened, I was responsible for them. And I was transferred to Oak Hill, where I retired out of Oak Hill as the first sergeant officer. I was over to Summersville, Valley Bridge, Richwood, and Oak Hill detachments. And in the same way, I was also responsible for the troopers, what they did, for the secretaries, for the civilian employees. So I did have experience in administration, more so in the state police at that time than I've had, of course, in the sheriff's department, but I know that I can do the job. Also, there's several things that I would tell them that I want to do. And one thing that's very, very important to me to do is have the deputies, when they investigate a crime, is not to forget about the victim after they've done all they can do. They contact the victim every so often, maybe every month, every 2 weeks. Some of that nature, they have a part on their report where they can do that. To make sure that maybe a year later that they call the person and say, hey, I'm sorry, I haven't found out anything. Have you found out anything? Just a good rapport between the sheriff's department and the civilians and the community. I know a lot of people in the federal government. There's Handle with Care that Governor who was U.S. Attorney, is a good one. It's a program called Handle with Care. It's easy and nothing expensive to do, that he would come down, or his people would come down. Actually, he's running for governor now, so it would be Ms. Chapman, Tracy Chapman, comes down and explains how they work. It has to do with going to schools and kids have had trouble at home or something. They've had some kind of a tragedy at home, and they're notified that the school watch that child, and they need counseling, they get counseling. There's all kinds of, and set up a good database of drug users in Fayette County itself. Also doing knock and talk. They do it in Putnam County. I read this in Putnam County, where you get a call, 24-hour call of drugs, and there's something suspicious going on, and you go in and have a couple of deputies, or have people that go, a couple of deputies go and do a knock and talk, and they just knock on the door, and they might smell the meth lab going, they might smell marijuana, and they have the right to go in there. Some of that nature would be very, very helpful in the drug crimes.
Mr. Cobb, are you familiar with the budget of the sheriff's office, and can you make it work?
You have to make it work. You may have to make it work with less. I think that it's going to those relationships with those other departments are going to have to help. I mean, you're going to have to work together to help. You may have to, as much as you would hate to, you may have to make those cuts where you don't want to, or those people that you don't want to. But that's because the folks that pay their taxes still expect service, regardless if you have 35 deputies or 3. So you have to make it work.
Mr. Ballard, are you familiar with the budget of the sheriff's office, and can you make it work?
Well, like most of them, we never said, yeah, you have to make it work. If there has to be layoffs, then you have to make those decisions. You start with the lowest and then, or the one that's been there the least amount of time, and work your way down. But you don't want to do that unless it becomes very necessary. I know that they spend over, I think, $1.3 million on paying the Southern Louisville jail. And there has to be a way through the legislature, and maybe through the prosecutor's office, or whatever we can do to get that cut back, and find ways that we can put people on, or send them to the Charlie's with right now, or some of that nature, or put the boot on them to where they have to stay home. To say that, $1.3 million, $1.3 million is a tremendous amount of money that could be used in other things. Like both of them said, we have to make it work. Whatever the budget will be is going to be decided by the county commission. And we have to make the cars work. We have to get things fixed and have to work, like I said earlier, with other departments and work together. And that's what you do when things get tough. You just get tough with it.
Start this time with Mr. Koff. What are your biggest frustrations with law enforcement?
We have an expectation from everybody. You know, we're the fix-all, and I get frustrated sometimes because we can't. Sometimes we're short funded. We don't have the funding. We don't have the proper equipment. We don't have the training. The public doesn't see that or doesn't realize that. Our job gets harder every day. We have the court system gets harder on us to prove a case. So our expectations, or what's expected of us, continues to grow, and our society continues to decline. But we still have the same expectation to fix it. It's just frustrating sometimes when you see that you go to work every day and you put your best effort in every day, but every day there's a different problem, or it just continues. It's just hard.
Mr. Ballard, what are your biggest frustrations with law enforcement?
I couldn't hit on any more than John did. It's just that, your money's cut back, you don't have the equipment you need, you don't have the training you need. Also, people like I said, they expect you to come there that you can take care of the whole kit and caboodle and get it done, but it's got to go through courts and it's got to go through the attorneys, and everything kind of gets more bogged down when it gets to that situation. It's some tough questions you're asking tonight, and I appreciate it. It's just that I think we're all here making the proper answers. We get frustrated, but you still got to do your job.
Mr. Bryant, what are your biggest frustrations with law enforcement?
As I stated before, the biggest frustration I think with any officer is that through law enforcement it is reactive and not proactive. We have to wait until something bad happens before we can do anything about it. We are seeing people at the worst they are. They are in the worst possible position when they call us for help. And we get there, we want to help. Frustration builds up because, as they both stated, sometimes we just cannot supply the help. We cannot move it back 5 minutes before the accident happened. We can't do it. We cannot get to the residents before the individual OD and bring him back. We can't do it. We cannot get there to the residents right before the individual broke in, stole all your goods. We can't do it. We're reactive, and it's a very frustrating, aggravating feel. And the officers that does it, it's a rough job.
Earlier, I think we've heard all of you mention that you would follow the law made by our legislators. So my question now, and we start with Mr. Ballard, is how important is the sheriff when it comes to making policy?
That's good. I don't believe, I didn't know the sheriff actually would make any policy per se like that. I thought that was something the legislature would do, so I don't have a good answer for that question. I'm sorry.
Okay. Mr. Bryant, how important is the sheriff when it comes to making policy?
I believe that, as Tom says, we do not set policies. We enforce policies. We enforce laws. I believe that the sheriff's office has the responsibility to enforce all laws that's current, that's active. Even though we do not agree with them, we've got to support them.
Mr. Cobb, how important is the sheriff when it comes to making policy?
Well, I guess I would like a little clarification. Are we talking about state law, state code, or internal policy?
I'm particularly thinking about state law and your relationship with our legislators.
I think that there comes times that if there's something we have a concern, I think that you do leverage your representatives to possibly lobby for something that you think is bad, just like the concealed weapons law that they passed. You can go down and voice your opinion. Now, it may not go your way, so then by code, you're expected to enforce those. So, I believe you enforce the state laws and code as they are. And if you have an opportunity through, the Deputy Sheriff's Association or the Chiefs Association to maybe lobby for something, I think that you should be involved in that. But once it's law, then, you just enforce it.
Since I clarified that for Mr. Cobb, would either one of you like to extend your comments at this point, what you said?
Well, clarification made a difference, yes.
Okay.
But, it's just, the policy, like he's talking about, I agree with 100%. It's just like anybody involved citizen. If you have something for, something against the policy, we're trying to get it enforced or not enforced, we're trying to get to the legislature, then you force you tell them what you think about it. And if you don't like it, then you'll all be against it, or tell your representative that you don't like it, it needs to be changed. And that's what, just as citizens, not necessarily just as a sheriff, of course, the sheriff would have to hear about the policies too, but that was kind of confusing to me, I apologize.
Okay, no, I'm glad I had the opportunity to clarify the question. Mr. Ryan, any other comments on that?
I agree with both of them. The sheriff is a leader of the community. I think a lot of times people will follow in suit with what the sheriff says and what the sheriff thinks, but at the same time, I believe the sheriff's got a lobby, as Mr. Call said, but once it's law, it's law.
Mr. Cobb, what are your views on addressing domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking victims?
Well, of course, we can't prevent any one of those. All we can do is hopefully answer those calls and be able to give those victims an avenue. A lot of times we get frustrated because we may suggest an avenue and those victims don't want to do that. Well, domestic violence especially. The sexual assaults, those are sensitive. I think that it's important to have an officer of, especially of that victim's gender, because they're more apt to speak with those. We have here in the Valley, we go to CMAC or Women's and Children's. There's a victim's advocate there. She's really good. They do the videotape. They do all the transcribing. It's all in one package, and also along with the medical examination. I just think that we need to really have a good working relationship with the victim's advocate, with the Women's Resource Center. The way we do have a current and up-to-date a phone number that we can even call and give those victims some good direction.
Mr. Ballard, what are your views on addressing domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking victims?
Well, of course, all violations of law and all need to be investigated, and to do it, you need to make sure that you have the rape kits handy and they're not out of date. You need to understand that let the person understand that has gone through the rape situation, the sexual assault situation, what you're going, and I agree with John, it's best to have someone of some gender in the building to take care of it. Also, the HHR has people that do that, and they take care of those problems. As far as stalking, stalking is hard to kind of prove. It's just one word against the other, unless you can actually hit somebody. That's where you get into your. They don't have the right to be there. They get the paper so that they can't be around the other person. Instead of something you can arrest them for that, but you need to be out of position. Our main thing we do is, we will arrest them, and they're against the law, and we are there to enforce the law and do the investigation and make the arrest. There's other parts of the criminal system that take care of the victims, and that's their job. Our job is to make the arrest and go from there.
We start now with Mr. Cobb. If you have an answer to this one, I need it. In what way would you make sure to keep up with the growing and ever-changing technology?
Well, we do, just by nature of our job. We went from handwritten reports to computer-generated reports. Your IT portion is very important. I think it's helped a lot in our report writing because spell check is awesome. And things like that, and, you know, you have to be able to leverage those different, technology-based, you know, everything from your crime reporting to your pawn shop reporting. I think it's very good to keep up with those technologies. And, you know, it's very important too, because there's a lot of the older folks that's been in this for a long time, you know, sometimes that they're very hesitant about getting involved in that, but it's something we've got to do.
Mr. Ballard, how do you keep up with the ever-changing technology?
You have to keep having classes on it when the new technology comes in. You have to let your people know that you have to have the money to be able to do it. That's the problem with a lot of the things we can and can't do is if we have the finances to do it. Like I said, technology is changing every day. I'm probably one of the worst. I have to have my 14-year-old daughter help me to buy a phone, so I'm old-fashioned car. But technology is the way of the world today, and you need to have training on everything that comes in. You need to know about it and have training on it, and it has to be paid for, and that's got to be put in the budget. That's my answer to that question.
Mr. Bryant, how do you keep up with ever-changing technology?
In that area, sir, I believe the Fayette County Sheriff's offices did very well. Sheriff Kessler has brought them up. Every individual in the Sheriff's Department is issued an iPhone that can be used as a recording device. It's a camera, it's a video camera. Not only that, that's one thing that each officer has on their person that they can use at the instant. That back when we first started, it was unheard of. We was lucky if we could find an instant camera. We also, the Sheriff's Office has issued each officer a computer that has gotten all the forms and everything generated for the reports. I believe the Sheriff's Office is very well up to date with IT. They also have officers on the force that's young, that's up to date with their training on that. That we can use their education and have every teach classes to keep everyone else up to date and doing the right time.
Around, and we start with Mr. Ballard. You do your job. Your deputies do their job. You arrest the bad guy. He goes to court, and the case gets thrown out because of a technicality. What's your reaction?
Well, that's where you get very frustrated, but your reaction is you got to do better next time. You got to find out what caused that to happen and not do it again. That comes from teaching, comes from experience. When it's done, it's done. You learn from it like anything else. When something happens, and it always takes something tragic to happen before we learn from it and do anything about it. That's what would have to be. It have to be done. You can't change it after it's already taken place. It's very frustrating, and it happens quite often. You need to teach your guys how to prevent that, but doing a good job of what they do on writing the reports, on knowing the who, what, when, where, and whys, doing a report, doing a crime report. That's just what you have to do. You have to learn. You have to learn from experience.
Mr. Bryant, you do your job, and then a case goes to court and gets thrown out because of a technicality. What's your reaction?
Reaction of everyone, I believe, is frustration. That's one of the things of the job. As Mr. Ballard said, we need to use it as a training tool. We need to learn from that and not repeat the same mistake over and over and over.
Mr. Croft, you do your job, and then a case goes to court and gets thrown out because of a technicality. What's your reaction?
Well, I'm going to assume by the question, we've done our job. We've done all the correct, we've checked all the boxes and done the correct investigation. And, and it gets thrown out for a technicality. Yes, you're frustrated. But you still have to pick yourself up and do it again tomorrow. And you may lose 10 in a row for technicality, but you still continue to drive on. All you can do is answer for yourself, do the correct thing that you can do. And if it gets mired down in the court system or at some level of the judicial system that's out of your control, then you just live with it and go on.
We start now with Mr. Bryant. Animal abuse and neglect is a big problem. And I think all of us have seen in our communities where sometimes there's a little buck passing, sort of like, it's not my job, it's somebody else's responsibility. How do we handle the animal abuse and neglect situation?
I believe the sheriff and Fayette County has already made a step forward in that. They hired an animal control officer. That his responsibility, main responsibility is to go out and investigate these issues. Once he sees that there is an issue, it's turned over to a deputy who continues the investigation. It's a criminal act, and sometimes can be a felony. It's a very serious crime. It's one that we have to work with and do the same as we do every other investigation to the best of our ability.
Mr. Kopp, how do we handle the animal abuse and neglect situation?
I think that a lot of this is left up to the interpretation of the officer that gets there. His definition of neglect or abuse may be completely different than another officer's definition. I wouldn't be opposed to, perhaps a trained, veterinarian or something to come in and give some training that, it kind of gives you a professional look at what a professional would see as neglect or abuse and go from there. But a lot of it's just way too open for interpretation.
Mr. Ballard, how do we handle the animal abuse and neglect situation?
Was there laws provided to handle that, and you enforce the laws? I think that's what you do. I don't totally agree with Mr. Koff in the fact that I think you can see an animal that's been abused, you can feel it hasn't been fed or been beaten or whatever, and how the animal acted. But I just, like I said, that's what the laws are for, and we enforce the laws, and that's part of the job. That's what I do.
We start now with Mr. Koff. Do you believe police or law enforcement corruption exists in Fayette County? And if so, how do you combat this issue?
It exists everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere. You would be naive to think that it's not in every agency. You can only, you're responsible for that agency, and all you can do is sit back and look at where you think there's a problem and try to correct it on a problem by problem basis. That's an open-ended question. It's tough to answer. And you don't know for sure if there is a problem until you actually feel that seat to look, or you hear somebody files a complaint, or you have an accusation, to at least take a valid or take a valiant effort to at least investigate it. But I think it's a problem everywhere.
Mr. Ballard, law enforcement corruption, how do we handle it?
Well, first you got to find out what it is and who's doing it. I agree that it is something, I don't know how prevalent it is. I hope it's not very prevalent around here. I think I know we're a good county and a good state. I think we believe in each other, and like Charlie said earlier, we're all brothers as far as that goes. But there's a situation where a deputy, one of my deputies would get in trouble, then I would find out about it. I'd contact the prosecutor's office, tell them what we had, and see what they say we need to do about it. Might have to hire an outside investigator, somebody maybe from the state police, from another county, from another division, to come in and investigate it. I don't think it depends on how serious it was, whether it would be investigated in-house or not. But it would definitely, if you find out about it, you got to take care of the right thing. You got to nip it in the bud, as old Barney would say, because if you don't, then it'll keep on going.
Mr. Bryant, how do we deal with the potential problem of law enforcement corruption?
I agree with Mr. Koff in the aspect that there is corruption in every type of organization in the world, regardless of what it is. There are individuals that gets into a police uniform do not make him a police officer. It makes him an individual in a uniform. When you find corruption, when you find somebody that's not doing what they're supposed to do, it's a crime, you investigate it, you prosecute it.
Another round, and we start with Mr. Ballard, and this sort of goes back to the question we had just a few minutes ago concerning technology, but how? How do you plan to deal with internet crimes like cyberbullying? How do you handle that?
Well, you have to have people that know how to investigate internet crime. And I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know if they have deputies that do that or not. They probably do. They've got some sharp guys on the force. I know the state police they do investigate interstate internet crime, and as far as you do, you find somebody that knows how to do it. You train them to know what they're doing, and follow through with the law and prosecute.
Mr. Bryant, how do you deal with internet crimes such as cyberbullying?
As Mr. Ballard just stated, it's a crime. It's investigated by our deputies there that's trained in internet crime. As I said earlier, the sheriff has provided computers for each one of them. There's certain processes, but it's still an investigation. You investigate it and you prosecute it.